Ok. Transmissão começou.
Posso começar, então?
Pode.
Ok. Bem, bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite, dependendo de onde cada um dos participantes está. Nós temos a satisfação de ter aqui conosco a professora Stelvia Matos, que vai nos apresentar esse webinar e conduzir essa discussão com os participantes sobre a revista científica Technovation. O título do seminário é Technovation, a Journal Venue for Brazilian Scholarly Outputs and Outcomes on Science, Technology and Innovation Policy and Management Studies. E a Stelvia é uma professora na Universidade de Surrey, na Surrey Business School. Ela é ali uma reader, equivalente a associate professor. E ela é a editora associada, co-editor-in-chief da Technovation. A pesquisa, na área de pesquisa, a Stelvia, I was supposed to speak in English, right? I'm sorry about that. I will switch now, sorry. Stelvia is a reader in Social Innovation and Sustainability Management and head of the Center for Social Innovation Management at the Surrey Business School. Her research focuses on understanding the complex interactions among social, environmental, and economic factors, and how they affect and are affected by innovation dynamics, entrepreneurial behavior, and policy development. This includes the difficult process of responding to technological and social change through innovation, which can be conceptualized as a panacea and paradox, a main driver of social improvement, but also the cause of many problems faced by society. She has published in several journals, including Entrepreneurship and Regional Development, Journal of Operations Management, International Journals of Operations, Technovation, California Management Review, Small Business Economics, Journal of Business Venture Insights, and Journal of Management Studies. Stelvia is currently the co-editor-in-chief for Technovation, and Technovation, which is a leading technology and innovation management journal. And just before I give the floor to Stelvia, I want to let you know that discussing with Stelvia in one of the meetings of the board of the editorial committee for Technovation, we found that researchers in Brazil and in Latin America might have an interest in appearing more in this journal or in submitting more articles and in having their research results published in Technovation. So we thought about this seminar as a way for Stelvia to let you know how the journal works, which are the topics of interest, and well, how to publish in Technovation, and why is that Technovation is interested in having authors from Brazil, from Latin America, and if in case you are participating, you are from another place, whatever Stelvia is going to tell us will be useful for persons anywhere in the world. So thank you very much for being here with us, and I have also to thank the research group on innovation at the University of Campinas, which is hosting and operating this webinar. Okay, so the floor is yours, Stelvia.
Thank you so much, Brito. Thank you very much for inviting me. I want to start by saying that I was super excited and happy with this invitation, more so perhaps than all the invitations that we get as editors of leading journals. It's always a pleasure to come and to speak about the journal and some of the things that we think that is important when developing papers. But this particular invitation for me had a special meaning, and this is because I remember vividly one of the first meetings that I had right when I started my appointment as co-editor-in-chief of Technovation. So we had a meeting with the publishers, and in the meeting, the publishers showed a report with Technovation's performance and a number of information about publications in the journal. And I remember this particular slide that showed number of papers submitted to Technovations and number of papers accepted by regions in the globe. And I remember seeing the data related to Brazil and Latin America, and I was very sad as a Brazilian and as a researcher that comes from Latin America. I was particularly sad to see the extremely low rate of acceptance of papers developed by Brazil and Latin America in general. So when I saw that, I asked myself, why, right? Does it have to be like that? Can we do something about it? And what can we do? And, you know, how can we change this picture? And that's why I think that I was super happy to be here today, because I will have the chance to discuss a little bit about that. Of course, my presentation will include some general points that are applicable to researchers all over the globe, but I do dedicate a portion of my presentation to discuss a little bit, you know, what happens with papers that are sent from Latin America and Brazil in particular. So let's share my slides. And there we go. Oh. It's not moving down. Oh, there you go. Right, so my presentation today will be highly influenced by, of course, my experience as editor-in-chief of Technovation and by reviewing so many papers and making decisions on so many papers, but it's also influenced by my own perspective on how to develop papers in this context. So nowadays, we actually talk about writing papers as a story. We write papers as storytellers as opposed to solely researchers. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So just as an overview of what I'm going to present, I'll start talking about the journal, then I'll go into this storytelling part where I make a note on knowledge production in challenging research contexts. After that, I'll talk about why review. That's an important part of publishing papers as well. And I'll conclude with some final remarks. So Technovation is one of the leading journals in the field of technology and innovation management. Our impact factor is 5.729, so it's quite high. And our number of submissions are increasingly high. To give you an idea, right now we have over 600 papers submitted, and we are in the middle of the year. So that's the middle of 2021. So I wouldn't be surprised if we reach, you know, over 1,000, maybe 1,200 submissions by the end of the year. And we think this is a response to the pandemic. I think people are working at home. They are having perhaps more time to write papers. The flip side, and the unfortunate side of this, is that people are less willing to review. I think they are getting themselves very busy writing the paper. So it's becoming quite difficult to get reviewers. So right now, and we are apologizing if it takes a little bit longer, although we do want to keep the process as short as possible. We are an interdisciplinary journal that includes all facets of technology innovation. And we do look for papers that can present contributions to theory and practice. More recently, we've launched a new type of paper within Technovation, which we are calling Technovation Insights. And what this is we're looking for papers that have the potential to significantly influence the academic discourse through addressing a relevant issue, some topic that is current, that is engaging, or addressing difficult problems in the remit of innovation management, or also raising awareness to hidden issues, or significantly contribute to theory, proposing new concepts, constructively challenging established ones. Of course, a regular submission to Technovation can include all this. I think the difference with the Technovation Insights is that it can be a shorter paper, but I also want to be clear here that it's not a practitioner type of paper. Technovation is not a practitioner journal. So we do expect the insights at the end propose and open some discussion for future research in the field of innovation management. So in that, we see three possibilities, but we are open to other types of papers as well, of papers. So the first one is phenomenological. These are empirical papers about the current phenomenon that draws on robust evidence. We do like very good data quality. It can be atheoretical, but again, we do expect that it has, it opens a discussion that can shape future theoretical studies. The type of paper can also be just theoretical, that, constructively challenging theories and approaches by introducing a different theoretical lens or perspective on how it may support practice. And it can also be methodological. We've seen recently methodologies really evolving in terms of changing and new methods, new tools, software tools, and approaches. So those papers can, present a different setting of data, or a fresh and creative methodology that is able to unravel new aspects of a particular phenomenon. So basically, we want pieces that have potential to have a great impact, right, on research. I think that's the spirit of the Technovation Insights. Right, now talking a little bit about some basic and points about what we expect on a paper that is submitted to the public, to Technovation, and also drawing on what I see quite often when I read the reviewers' comments that perhaps are rejecting the paper or major revisions. So there are some obvious things and easy things. The first one is short titles are more memorable, and this is a suggestion. Of course, it's not a rule, but I do think that people tend to remember short titles better. Something that the reviewers quite commonly complain is that the objective of the research question, the objective of the study comes sometimes too late in the beginning of the paper. Sometimes third page seem to irritate the reviewers quite a lot. So we always suggest that you state the research question and the study objectives in the very beginning. The other common reason for rejection, it's like sometimes a gap is identified.
Ele ia ver o que ele tinha que fazer no narizinho dela. Ele estava pensando em comprar um nebulizador para deixar lá, para limpar sempre o narizinho dela.
Tem uma interferência, Stelvia.
Tem alguém com o
Oh,
microfone aberto.
Acho que já...
Right, so the other point that the reviewers don't seem to like is it's the indication that there is a gap that needs to be filled, but it's not sufficient to just say that there is a gap. You need to show it, convince it, show evidence of this gap, communicate this gap to the reader, and describe and explain how you're going to address it with your study. The other thing that goes really well in terms of crafting and developing a paper is to state the contributions clearly and quite often in more than one place. So we welcome people to, dedicate to 1 or 2 sentences of contributions in the abstract and say that in the introduction and really make the case clearly in the discussions and conclusions. So the introduction should be a standalone overview of the paper, as opposed to a movie. Academics don't like surprises at the end, so we really motivate people to present a concise overview of what the paper is about, right in the introduction, and then you have the rest of the paper to explain yourself, to clarify all the points and make the case. We don't encourage people to use expressions like I believe, I suggest, and neither the expression of to the best of our knowledge. And the reason is that the paper should be a scientific study and not an opinion. And the issue with to the best of our knowledge is that the paper should be about the state of knowledge of the field and not the state of knowledge of the authors. So those kinds of expressions give a wrong sense of the accuracy of the argument in the paper. So we don't encourage that. And not many people pay attention to the abstracts, which I found a missed opportunity to sell your message, to get your paper, read by potential, followers of your research. So do make the effort to make the abstracts captivating without overpromising, of course. Include what the article is about, what is the research question, the technique, method used, and contributions to theory and practice. So I know some of these points are quite common, quite known by many people, but I found that it's never too much to emphasize the importance of paying attention to this kind of details when elaborating the paper. Right, now how to tell the story. As I said in the beginning of my presentation, now we see crafting papers and writing papers as storytelling. And I remember going to this presentation a long time ago by an editor of the Journal of Management Studies, and I love this slide because it really helped me to communicate what we mean by storytelling and perhaps provide some structure of that can guide some people on how to to organize the ideas. So point number one is, okay, this is the phenomenon that I'm focusing on. At the first sentence of and the first paragraph of your paper need to communicate the reader what the paper is about. And this is why it's relevant. We do need to sell it. We need to convince the reader that this is an important issue that needs to be addressed. This is what it is known and not known, and you can see that this is clearly the literature review, which I'll discuss in a little bit of more detail later. So this is what is known, not known, but this is what we don't know, and hence my burning question needs to come next. And this is how I am to address the question, which is clearly related to the methodology. This is what I did also, and this is what I found, and this is what it means. One of the main reasons for rejections of papers is lack of discussions of the results. This is extremely important, and here is the opportunity to go back to the literature and communicate to those authors what do you have to add in terms of research findings. So what does it mean? And this is what I add to the discourse, which are the contributions, and you still need to tell the reader why this is important, why they should care about your contribution. So I'll discuss a few of those points in the storytelling, but not all of them. I just want to highlight a few things that I find important to communicate in this presentation. So regarding the point of the literature review, which we see as this is what is known and not known, I much prefer see it as a room of conversation. And I think if everybody could, think about the literature review as, imagine literally getting to the room where the authors that you're citing are there. So first of all, who is in that room? Who are the main authors? And who are the studies that are related to the topic that you are, examining? And within those authors, you have seminal papers, papers that are old, but they really open the new field of discussion and the theoretical approach and research. But it's also super important, of course, to show that you are up to date in terms of what has been done. So recent articles are fundamental. This is another very common reason for rejection when the reviewers see that the literature, the list of references is old. So what has been done recent, you need to enhance our knowledge. So you can only enhance our knowledge if you are quite comfortable in knowing what has been done. So you're adding to it. And what are they talking about in that room of conversation, right? What is the hot topic now? What is the big challenge? What is the big question that nobody, can answer or is struggling to answer? What is the gap? What is the high demand? Well, what are the trends? So I think this should all be in your literature review and showing to the reader that you really know, you're really up to date, we are really on top of the literature, and you're really motivated to contribute to it. So there are many ways of also doing this. You can bridge conversations between, papers and previous studies, take the conversation where it has not yet gone, or describe how it needs to move forward, and that is directly related to what you want to address in your work. And regarding now to the point of the methodology, right? So this is how I am to address my research question. Of course, all journals, all top journals expect that you demonstrate a solid methodological foundation, right? But here I come with my specific message to researchers from Latin America. And I say this because I conducted a lot of research in emerging economies, and I have in my head so many, stories, interesting stories that happened when I was dealing with very, very small entrepreneurs, for example, impoverished communities. So it was an amazing time, and I love doing research in this area. So I think it deserves to be more carefully thought through in terms of how we apply methodological effort in that. And the point that I want to make here is watch out for ethnocentric assumptions of rigor in data collection and analysis in qualitative data, in qualitative research. And by ethnocentric assumptions, I mean studies which mechanistically replicate methodological templates developed for high-income management research in low-income contexts. And the problem here is that this may inadvertently depress the development of novel ideas and theories. So I'm gonna open up this a little bit more and explain exactly what I mean by that. So in this table we have on the left column the situation and the methodological templates that were developed by seminal studies like Gioia, Eisenhardt. We know those studies so well, and they are amazing, extremely high quality, and super important in terms of the research that we do. But on the right side of this table, of the right column, we have some observations that, and this is a study that my colleagues in Finland and in the UK are developing, that we observed when there are some complications when trying to apply these templates that were developed for research that are conducted in totally different settings, in strong institutional settings, in settings that are no problem with safety, for example, that there are not problem with illiterate interviewees, right? So we need to pay attention on a few things. So I'm going to start with the first row. So one assumption from the template is that informants are knowledgeable agents, know what they are trying to do, and can explain their thoughts, intentions, and actions. And the reality sometimes that we face when conducting research in emerging economies is that informants are knowledgeable, but not all the time they are familiar with research interviews or they actually find it difficult to articulate their thoughts. So this gets in the way of both collecting good data and interpreting the data, so data analysis. The second line shows on the left side, researchers can figure out patterns in data, surface concepts and relationships that might escape the awareness of the informants. And then on the right side, we have the fact that actually sometimes researchers may face challenges interpreting that data due to voids of meaning and differences in the life worlds that they inhabited. We've observed that sometimes there is such a cultural difference between the researcher and the interviewee or informant that different culture and a difference becomes a difference in power, and sometimes the interviewee feels intimidated or sometimes even think, okay, I should say this because this person is more important than me, or I'm not gonna say this because while for me it's okay because that's my reality, for this person which is above me, perhaps this is there is a moral issue involved. So all those things actually again, complicate the accuracy of the data collection and analysis. So the next point is semi-structured interviews are the main data source. And then what we propose actually in context where it is challenging to collect data, when there are all these difficulties in interpreting information, when the interviewee has difficulties in articulating what she or he is trying to talk about, there are other ways of collecting data that can provide valuable insights and cues into the phenomena under study. And the last point on the left side is that the Eisenhower template builds on a search for facts that emphasize courtroom-style interviewing and a retrospective approach. Well, we've found that sometimes interrogative interviewing may intimidate informants, especially those in corrupt or under authoritarian regimes. And again, we can go back to that difference as well of cultural difference and social status difference as well. So collecting real data as opposed to retrospective data may become actually more useful, and is with, you know, having insightful discussions right there, right while you're talking to that person, and also adding visual data can be very useful to enhance the quality of your evidence that you are providing. And this is also part of our study that we are developing with my colleagues in Finland and in England. So what we have in this figure is a situation where we want to move away from. So this is the detrimental effects of ethnocentric research approaches to knowledge production in methodologically challenging contexts. So places that sometimes are hard to get access, are dangerous to have access. People are illiterate or are under pressure to respond in a certain way. So on the top of the figure, you have pressure for research rigor, and then can come from imposition of ethnocentric quality criteria, because this is what the journals expect that you follow, the templates. And on the other hand, they also expect you to provide a novel theoretical contribution. And then in the bottom of the triangle, we have the low-income emerging economy context, and a huge potential to provide great insights, new insights to the whole, you know, community of academics in the field of management. But then at the bottom of the figure, we show that unfortunately, sometimes because of this pressure to follow certain templates, some journals get to publish data that is actually manipulated or even false. And it's also unfortunate that sometimes the papers that are published are isomorphic research, and the relevant idiosyncratic issues were actually ignored or obscured. So just that the paper looks much more like the, you know, expected templates and not actually providing something new. And another unfortunate outcome of this situation is that sometimes the journals reject the papers that there's a missed opportunity for theoretical contributions, or reject papers that useful insights for society improvements fail to be diffused. So those that try to be original and creative get rejected if they not follow the expected templates. So which is, again, a missed opportunity for theoretical contribution. So we want to move from this situation to this situation here. A pluralistic approach to knowledge production in methodologically challenging contexts. So ideally, we would like to see still expectation for interpretative rigor is still there. We are not saying that we should get rid of the rigor, but we are suggesting that context-sensitive approaches, pluralistic methods can be and have the great potential to contribute quite a lot in the quality of the study here. So we keep the expectation of knowledge, of novel knowledge production. We're not, giving up of quality and contribution. But you see at the bottom, we revert the rejected papers now are the dubious ones, the isomorphic ones. They're not really contributing anything relevant or significantly. And now the published ones are those that show transparency, honesty in how research was obtained and reported, that use context-sensitive methods and were more prominent in terms of discussing the limitations. And I want to make a point here of talking about limitation, which has been underappreciated. I know, and this is very common for many authors to believe that describing limitations will lead to rejections. But we are suggesting to change this, to describe a limitation as pointing out the limitations and how to address it. So it's more about sharpening a study's contribution than making it weak or vulnerable. And there is a wonderful paper written about, the opportunity missed on not providing a proper limitation. It's a Journal of Management. It's by Bruto et al. In 2013. It's excellent. So, but now that we talked about a lot about why publishing and the issues of crafting and the challenges, I want to take one moment to talk about why to review. It's very beneficial to review. We become a better researcher and a better publisher by reviewing. It's easier to know what authors do well and do not do well, and we process this message much better than the actual authors that got the feedback. And this is empirically proven in one of the studies that were published about this. Another reason to review is that good reviewers are approached to sit on editorial boards, which is very good for an academic career. It also has the potential to increase author citations. I have two things to tell about this. Well, first one is, of course, be careful when reviewing. It's a little bit dangerous and not recommended to suggest to the authors to cite your work unless it is extremely necessary and directly related. The authors really missed some important message. Let's not use the opportunity of reviewing just so that we have one way to increase our citations. But the other important point here is that many times the reviewers are chosen because they were cited in the study, and that's the best way to do it, because then the editors are definitely and clearly putting the paper in the right room of conversation, right? So ideally, we should get the reviewers that are cited in that paper. So it's good that you have the chance to see how other people are citing your work and really engage in this kind of conversation. That's how it should be. And finally, to get exposed to a great piece of work before most people can access it is quite rewarding and nice to come up with a piece of study, a publication that is fantastic, that is really well done. Right, and to conclude, I guess the things that I'd like to you that are watching today to take away are quite a few, but not many. So first of all, write in an accessible way. Avoid elegance without relevance. I think a clear, simple message, but a strong message it really is adding to our research field is phenomenal. It's fantastic to have it. Be connected, identify trends, hot topics, and get into that room of conversation. It's super important and will go a long way in terms of helping your study to be accepted. And again, if collecting data in challenging contexts, which are most common in emerging economies, watch out for ethnocentrism in data collection and analysis. Do consider context-sensitive ways of collecting data and analyzing it, and give research limitations a more prominent and meaningful role. And don't get defensive about feedback. The reviewers don't know who you are. They don't know if you are short or tall or your name absolutely did. So the criticism is about the study, not about you. So we need to take it in a very positive way, even though I know it's difficult. And finally, do meaningful research. Work worth to be published is work that has potential for significant impact in both theory and practice. And I can tell that that's what everybody is looking now. What is the impact? What is the contribution? What is the meaning of that study? I'm quite happy that we are moving away from quantity to quality. And that's just fantastic. Right, I hope this was useful and thank you very much. And I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stelvia. It was a great presentation. Several aspects which I'm sure will be helpful for the potential authors to submit to Technovation. We have time for some questions from the audience. I'm not sure how we are supposed to organize the questions. Any instructions, Sergio?
Yeah, I think Adriana is taking note on the questions that are incoming the YouTube. And so we have also about 18 people here in the Zoom that could also make directly the questions.
The questions. Okay.
So Adriana is going to send to me the questions, I believe. And then I will send to you. I don't know if this is the way we organize it, but I suppose yes.
Yeah, it works. It should work okay. So while we wait for the first question, I have a question for Stelvia, which is, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about how the journal, or if the journal works to create media visibility for some of the articles which are published, because one of the things that universities, research funders, and researchers are worried about today is about the impact of their ideas, not only impact in terms of citations, which more or less appears in the impact factor of the journal, but also on the impact on, I don't know, in public policy, in the debate of ideas, so that many times media repercussion might be relevant for that. Does Technovation have any type of effort towards this end?
We do. I'm sure you are aware that we have a Facebook page, and that's being amazingly active in terms of, over, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 2,000 people are in there, and there are all the time many things happening in terms of activities of the journals and authors, that have been having the opportunity to use that type of outlet to send a message of what they are doing. But we are always looking for new ways of introducing in this new era where everything now is digital, is remote. Yeah, we are definitely also looking to, in addition to the Facebook, increment other ways of media engagement. Yes.
Very good. Thank you. Other questions?
I have a question as well.
Sergio Queiroz, please, Sergio, go ahead.
Okay, well, first of all, Stelvia, thank you very much for your presentation. I think you provide us with excellent suggestions about what to pay attention to when writing a paper to Technovation. But I had the impression that most of these suggestions are valid for a number of top journals. I wonder what would be 1 or 2 points that you would underline for those who intend to write to Technovation, those who are targeting Technovation specifically?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Sergio. Good question. I would say that the number 1 point that we look, the first thing that we look in a paper that is submitted to Technovation is whether the paper is in the room of conversation of technology and innovation management. And by that, I mean the list of references we have a number of journals, right? So I'm not talking about citing papers from Technovation. I'm talking about, we have a field, which is technology innovation management. Is the paper talking with this discourse? That's the number 1 thing that it is important. And that's the number 1 reason for rejection many times. So that's very important.
Okay, thank you.
May
Paulo, please.
Paulo,
yes.
Paulo, please.
Okay, so Stelvia, thank you very much for your presentation. Other than be inspiring, it makes me think a little bit on why it's so hard for us Brazilians to publish on top journals. It's not that we are not publishing, but we are always far from I would say an average good level for publication and papers and so on. Is it a matter of what we research? Are we the problem, or is there a sort of persecution on Brazilians on top journals?
Thank you, Paulo. I quite often have hear the same question, and well, I try to address this. Well, there are obvious reasons and not so obvious reasons. The obvious reasons is just out of context, out of scope, etc. Not good quality. And as Sergio said, that applies to many top journals. We have to have first quality. And I remember doing a presentation at Foundation Getúlio Vargas in São Paulo, and I don't remember the name of the professor, but he said something so interesting, that many Brazilians develop research and they okay, first they copy, right, that model that was developed by a fantastic researcher, and again we come to the point where, all right, are we just mechanically imitating? And then he said, and then the researcher, of course, probably students, and then he said, and then they had the case of Jaú, right? So sometimes researchers forget who they're talking to. So remember that your paper it can go to a reviewer in Croatia, right? Because Croats also develop research in the field of technology and innovation management. And they are reviewers for Technovation. So think how a researcher from Croatia you know, and that person was chosen because somehow the topic is aligned with that same field of research. What would that person find interesting in your research? So, and often we see papers talking just to JAU as opposed to, right, okay, you can very well use the case of JAU, and through the case of JAU, find a message that actually adds guy in Croatia that he did not think about. So as a means to find a theoretical contribution is absolutely fine, but sometimes we do see many papers just having that, you know, exclusive conversation with the people from JAU, and that's it. And that's one common mistake. We need to remember that this is a global journal. We send, the reviewers are from all over the place, and they still need to find your paper very interesting. It cannot exactly be applicable to Croatia, but he needs to see the importance and the contribution of your work as a quality, as a research point. So
Thank you very much. Oops, I'm sorry.
Remember, they don't know where you're coming from.
Yeah, no, you know that since in the last 10 years, I have forbidden our research group back here in Rio Grande do Sul to mention Porto Alegre or elsewhere from Rio Grande do Sul, and obviously you cannot mention Rio Grande do Sul in any paper. It's forbidden because it's obviously
competition is super hard today. You saw how many papers we are getting. So we are going to reach, I think, 1,200 paper submissions at the end. It's extremely difficult. So competition is super high. So we have many factors adding to this result. But we try to address as much as we can and identify whatever factor we can do something about it, right? Which I try to point out in my presentation. But we have to remember that it's been incredibly competitive to publish.
Thank you, Stelvia. We have here 3 questions which came through the YouTube. So I'll go to the first one. Deborah Moretti from the University of Bonn in Germany. Deborah says, thank you for the presentation. And she asks, does the journal address somehow the quality of language due to the difference in language, right? To diminish the gap between native and non-native speakers?
I'm not sure if I understood the question, if it is in terms of if we provide resources to diminish the language gap.
I think that there would be two strands here. One, if the journal offers on the web or tools that might help non-native English speakers. And the other one, I guess, would be if the journal works on editing the final version to help it get into a better form of the English language.
Right now, it's up to the author to do this work. The journal cannot, we don't have resources to help with, we call copy editing, right? And when we encourage people and authors that are not native English speakers to copy edit the paper. Unfortunately, leading journals, we cannot publish papers that the English is not top notch. But there are, services that do that, right? Copy editing people. So, I'll suggest to go for that. We don't have the resources to do for you.
Thank you, Stelvia. Another question from Renata Larover from Federal University in Rio de Janeiro. Renata asks, she says, I once heard from a colleague that journals tend to welcome articles that include in the bibliography review other articles that were published in the same journal. Does this proceed?
Yes, so we are back to the room of conversation thing. It's unethical of any editor to tell the authors that they need to cite their own journal. We're not allowed to do this. It's unethical. But the question here is not cite just for the sake of citing as one of the techniques to get your paper published, right? I think you improve the quality of your paper much more if you do truly engage in this conversation with the other studies that are relevant to your research, rather than following some recipes. So naturally, you should see opportunities to cite Technovation papers if you are discussing about, a topic that is related to technology and innovation management. So, but it should not be forced.
Great, thank you very much, Stelvia. Then a question from Alan Santos from Unicamp. Could you please comment about the Matos effect? And if there are any differences in this effect between Latin American and European publications and journals? If there are journals. Which effect? Matos effect, that's the one that, well, those who have will have more, those who have nothing will lose everything that they have from the Bible. I think it's chapter 27, versicle 29 in Matthew's word. So if the question is, if the journal considers the fact that there are different resources for research in different places, right?
Okay. Of course not. It's all about the value of the contribution here. We don't choose where this contribution is coming from. We cannot do that. I think statistically speaking, if you think about the number of business schools, the number of students there are in the US, in China, in Europe, I think statistically speaking is more likely that one paper from those regions are accepted than from regions where the number of students and schools and business schools and funding research, all this, play a role in the production of papers. So we have here a numerical and statistical influence, but I can tell you for sure that once we see a wonderful paper, a great theoretical contribution, it doesn't matter where it comes from. We cannot miss the opportunity to publish there. It's too good, and we won't.
So then the selection is based on the ideas, on the content of
absolutely. There is no persecution.
or favors.
Or favors. Yeah. They don't know who you are. They don't know. They're not supposed to know where you're from or which university or nothing.
Thank you, Stelvia. Another question here is about towards the end of your presentation. Cristiano asks if it seems that you mentioned a trend of moving away from quantitative to qualitative. Is this something that the journal is doing, or is this something the journal editors are noticing in the submissions, or did they get it wrong?
No, sorry if I gave this impression, and thank you so much for asking this question, because it will give me to clarify. Absolutely not. Both quantitative and qualitative, mixed of qualitative and quantitative in the same paper, it's all welcome. My my slides and discussion about the ethnocentric is just that we are conducting, myself as a researcher and my colleagues are conducting research precisely on this phenomenon. And it just happens is that we are focusing on qualitative research. I did not want to give the impression that we are more open to qualitative than quantitative. Absolutely not. Technovation takes both types of methodology equally.
Very good. Thank you, Stelvia.
And thank you for your question. That's excellent.
May I make a question?
Please, Sergio. Of course.
Okay. I think there is no one else in the room. So first of all, thank you, Stelvia, for your presentation. Very instructive and indeed creative, because you approached a kind of problem. And this is my first question related to this ethnocentric and non-ethnocentric approaches. And if I understood, just to check if I understood, you mentioned that the journal trying to push towards this more pluralistic and non-ethnocentric approaches in research. Is that right? Did I understand it well?
I think in contexts where it's very challenging to collect data and to analyze data, the journal encourages pluralistic approaches to methodology. Yes, that's my answer.
And do you? Oh, sorry, please.
And we've seen recently a lot of methodological studies that are really trying to move away from the traditional, the conventions, and you know, we always welcome fresh ideas and creative ideas with rigor. But I wanted to be careful here in say that we're moving towards only one direction. We have the best way to see is our list of area editors. If you look how open we are to different, you know, aspects of technology and innovation management, I just want to be careful here in giving the impression that we are moving towards one direction particularly.
Yeah,
the only direction that we want to move always is increasing relevance, increasingly interesting research and meaningful studies that we all agree that we should go forward. But each area we have different approaches that are quite conducive to what they are dealing with, and we need to respect that, and we need to make sure that we are in that right page.
And do you give any kind of advice or hint to reviewers in order to be more open-minded in this sense? Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Because the full story of encouraging pluralistic and context-sensitive approaches to studies are developing in very difficult contexts is the need to align, right, with the right reviewer, because they can, oh, wait a second, you're not following the conventional templates, I'm going to reject this. So this is precisely why I'm so happy with this opportunity right now. It's the message from the editor-in-chiefs that can communicate to the reviewers that, you know, we are calling for a close attention to what kind of data, of methodology you are dealing with. And the good editor will put your paper in the right room of conversation, right? Will put your paper within the reviewer that is aware of this openness of the paper and the editors, that our job is to showcase what we're looking for. And, you know, this webinar is fantastic. This is exactly what I'm doing. And that said, also, not always we have the chance to put or to find that perfect reviewer. People are, too busy. It's a volunteer job, so sometimes we do not get the perfect reviewer that we wanted. But that, again, the job of a good editor is to follow closely the review process, right? We are saying here that this type of creativity with quality should be embraced. That those contexts, they are calling for other types of methods, the combination of different methods, because there are difficulties. We will follow closely if the reviewer is on the same page, right? And this is our job to make sure that the value of the paper is emphasized and is appreciated by the reviewer. So there's a lot of things that need to be aligned, and we are making sure that we do our best for that to happen.
Yeah. Thank you. But another question, it's not exactly a question, it's just a curiosity of mine. Once I watched a presentation from Research Policies, Ben Martin, the editor of Research Policy, and he gave a kind of overview about the trends. What are the main trends in terms of topics, the hot topics that are, supposed to be published in the coming years? I don't know if you do something similar as a Technovation. I mean, looking at the topics that arrive and then seeing ahead what is coming up, or something like this.
We do have, I don't know if it is out already, but we just recently accepted a paper on looking to 40 years of Technovation, and there are papers that do this kind of overview of the literature and trying to identify those trends. These are precisely the papers that are going to identify the trends, the hot topics that are coming out there, and it's a great way to look into sources of that kind of information. I think in general, every editor of every journal would agree with me that the whole, the digital economy has amazingly changed how people do business, how innovation is, coming to fruition. It has influenced our lives in all sorts of ways. And there are also, the grand challenges that we haven't solved yet, right? We have the poverty, climate change, and those things that we have yet to figure out. So there are things that we have not solved and need to be addressed in research, and there are things that are coming to place and influencing the way that we do research that we need also to consider in our research. So I'll suggest to look into those review papers that can give quite a robust, methodologically speaking, analysis of trends and hot topics too.
The review papers, Stelvia, they are invited by the journal or submitted, or the authors propose a review and discuss
review
with
papers
the editors?
They're submitted because they are reviewed as a regular paper. But
is it possible for an author to consult with the editor and say, I'm thinking about writing a review? Because writing a review is a lot of work, right?
Yes, there are two things there. One is we get a lot of reviews as submissions, so the competition is high. And it's difficult to find a review that is actually saying something that we don't know. So they forget that the review needs a research question. Sometimes they don't do that. And yeah, you do review, but you still need a research question. And the other thing is that we do not, Wim and I, which is the other co-editor chief, Wim van Haverbeck, we decided and we agreed to not give any pre-assessment, because with over 1,000 people submitting, if we do, we're not gonna, stop looking at all.
Right, yeah, of course. Get it. Any other questions, colleagues? I have another one, which is the following. Sometimes in conferences in Brazil, or sometimes even in publications in which I work as reviewer or associate editor, sometimes articles from Brazil tend to use more space than would be necessary to situate the research. And that seems to me to come from the fact that the research community in Brazil is small. So there is the number of people working in each topic is minute. And so when they meet in a conference, they tend to feel that they need to use a lot of time to explain where they are. While when you are in Europe or the United States, you go to a conference, you start talking about your results. You go like, okay, there are 2 or 3 points which someone said, and there are those questions, and then you go to your work. While here, there is a long number of minutes of reviewing, so-and-so did this, did that, and this and that. Does that kind of, do you feel that in your experience, does that appear in the submissions that you receive?
Maybe. I don't think so, Brito.
No. Okay.
I do get reviews saying that their introduction is too long, but it's not particularly from Brazil, it's from any place. I think this can come from any part of the world.
It's not a noticeable effect. Okay, that's good to hear. Let me see, there is a new question here in the chat. Edmundo from Unicamp asks, is the journal considering some orientation to make reviewer process an open process to all authors, reviewers, and editors? I would believe that by open, he means not a confidential review.
Not anonymous.
Yeah.
No, there is no talk about that. I think, yeah, but I think, I find it's more fair to keep it anonymous. We should not know where you come from, and really just look at your study and that's it. I prefer it that way. Yeah.
And the way you work it's a double blind, right?
Yes.
The reviewer doesn't know who are the authors, at least it doesn't come printed there, and the authors do not know who the reviewer is.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, may I make a final
Please,
question
Sergio.
here?
Yeah, we have a minute for one question.
Yeah. I don't know if somebody else would like to make a question. Otherwise, so it's about open access. I saw the word open here, and I immediately connected it with the open access now, and the prices. How Technovation is dealing with this? I mean, paying for having an open access, the prices. This is a big discussion nowadays.
It is possible, and some but you have to buy the open access, and many journals are in the same boat.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly the price. I do know the price of all the journal because I publish there, but because I don't tend to publish in Technovation very often since I became the editor-in-chief.
Anyway, it's a green journal, right? It's a green journal. If an author needs to publish or wants to publish in open access, there is an APC charge.
Exactly. Yes. So as everybody is doing, I don't think it's any different from any other journal. You just pay for it and you have access.
Article processing. Yeah. Well, we don't know where it's going to end up. This kind of thing, because the prices are higher and higher, each time more expensive to publish. And some areas nowadays you only publish paying. It's something, it's not in our case, in this area of science, technology, policy, management, etc. But in some areas, as medicine, for instance, it's more and more the journals charge.
That is complicated.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Stelvia, for a very nice and useful presentation. Thank you to the audience for attending and participating in this webinar. We really hope it was useful for all of you. And thank you to Professor Sergio Sales and Professor Sergio Queiroz, who lead the research group on science policy at Unicamp, who hosted the seminar and the presentation. So thank you very much. I think it's time we close our seminar. Thank you, Stelvia.
Thank you so much, Stu. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Nice to hear from you.
Thank you, colleagues.
Bye-bye.